Welcome to Discovering Nutrition with Chronometer. I am your host and community marketing manager, Elisa, and today I am thrilled to have on special guest, Dr. Dwayne Jackson. Dr. Jackson is a father, athlete, health specialist, medical educator, scientist, and an entrepreneur. He has over 12 years of university education in exercise and human physiology, medicine, and nutritional biochemistry. Dr. Jackson holds a PhD in neurovascular physiology and has been educated at some of the top academic institutions in North America. Those include the University of Ottawa, the University of Western Ontario, and Yale University School of Medicine. In this episode, we sit down with Dr. Jackson to discuss men's health, how to combat the detrimental effects of shift work, the role alcohol plays in our health, and how much we can actually drink without impacting our health. We also discuss why starting self-care and stress management matters right now. As always, this podcast is for general purposes only and does not constitute the practice of medicine, nursing, or other professional healthcare services, including getting medical advice. The use of information from this podcast is at the user's own risk and is not to be substituted for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. So I do have a number of questions about men's health. Obviously, I am not a man, and a lot of the things I personally haven't really experienced, but I do have so many men in my life that I adore and would love for them to be as healthy as possible. And then I asked all of our my male coworkers at work if they had questions, and then I asked our community if they had questions, and we have a lot. And thankfully, I read your bio. You have a lot of expertise in nutrition in general, which is amazing. You went to school for 12 years, is that right?
Yeah. So I went to university. So I left for university after my pro motocross career, basically because my parents were all over my back to go to school. Luckily enough, when I was younger, my parents somehow gave me a decent brain. So I didn't actually, school wasn't really a real tough thing for me. So I'd set myself up for university just by accident. I just wanted to be a pro athlete. And so my grandmother was like, you got to go off to university like Marg Trotman's daughter went, and I was like one of the first people in my neighborhood to even go off. So I went off to university, went to University of Ottawa here in Canada, did my undergraduate degree in kinesiology and just loved it, just completely just fell in love with academia. High school was way too easy and it just was boring, but loved university. So I just stayed in it. I stayed in university. I actually stayed in university for about 30 years, to be honest, because I went to university, kept going. And then, 13 years later, I'm a professor in medicine. Mm-hmm. And, I'm training people in surgery and all these weird techniques that I've learned over the years, and had a big lab, studied basically autonomic nervous system control and the impact of stress on both women and men's health from a cancer perspective and a performance perspective. So I had all these different facets that I studied. I did that till I was 48 last year. And then I decided to take a leave and do something new. I was kind of getting bored with being in the medical system and being under the iron curtain of academia, because unfortunately, when you're in medicine, you aren't really able, at least in Canada, you aren't really given a long leash to be able to help people outside of, right?
No, we're actually Canadian too.
Super. Okay.
Yeah. I'm in BC. Are you in Ontario still?
No, man, I'm in Tofino. I'm in Yuki, actually.
Are you serious?
I live. So that's what. So here's the story. So here's the real story. So this is really cool. During the time while I was during COVID, I went through kidney failure.
Oh. No.
And I was a past big bodybuilder, 260-pound guy,
yes.
big muscular guy. I'm 198 pounds now. So I went through kidney failure and dialysis and then transplant. It was a real awakening for me because it was due to hypertension caused by stress at work. Mm-hmm. And it was funny because, everything that I loved about academia actually became not what I loved anymore once I was actually in the underbelly, they call it. So once I became a chair of medicine, I was chair of undergraduate medicine, I started to see things that weren't it was a big business. It wasn't what I thought it was. It was Wizard of Oz problem. I stepped behind the scenes and went, whoops, I'd spent 30 years in this thing that I didn't know that's what it was. So So I basically I left, and we bought this place out here. First, we left Ontario, London, Ontario, of all places, University of Western Ontario. Came out here to the island. We bought this house online because, as you know, you can't. I couldn't even get a flight out here before to look at it to buy it, to be bought up, right? So that's how we ended up here. So basically, this was a complete life flip. And I said to my wife, now I can get out there and help people, like really help them without worrying about this whole scope of practice stuff. So that's where I am now. So I've been working behind the scenes, formulating supplements, working with people with really unique cases for their nutrition. And now I'm out there. So this is why I kind of held back behind the scenes, was because, academia kind of keeps you under that umbrella. So now I'm out there. Now we're doing our thing. And that's when I kind of hooked up with Dawn, because I don't know if you know Jordan Shallow with Prescript. Okay, so Prescript is it's a educational company for trainers. It's like to train trainers. Okay. And that's Jordan noticed that I was working with these pro bodybuilders and getting them healthy, and they were like winning these big shows. And so him and I anyway started talking. So I became his nutrition director for this big outfit. And that's kind of the rest is history. And now I've got, a massive roster of people that I work with, from people with double, lung and heart transplants to kidney transplants, right through to people who weigh 800 pounds. And I handle those interesting, complicated cases for nutrition.
That's incredible. We're based in Revelstoke.
That's so cool.
I know. Actually, one of our design team members just moved to Souk. So is it Souk or Souk?
I think it's Souk. I call it Souk.
Me too.
Just outside of Victoria. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was in Tofino just a couple of years ago. It's beautiful by the ocean. So we are actually basically neighbors. We could have gone on a road trip and we could have done this live. I don't know. We have a missed opportunity.
Yeah. So, we'll definitely take advantage of that opportunity. Got to get out here to my studio. This place is awesome. I've got my gym in behind me. We've got we're living right on the Pacific. We've got a beach right on our yard.
There's a lot of evidence that backs living by the water and reduce stress. I actually 100%. did a whole bunch, just trying to. I live in a townhouse in Revelstoke. Real estate is very very expensive, as it would be there too. And one day I will live on the water. So you're living my dream. I'll definitely come visit.
Yeah, you got time. I got a few years on you, so that's how we did it. And this was an all in full gamble. Like, pack the kids up, let's go.
Amazing. And it's paid off, because the joy is palpable. Your joy is palpable.
Thank you. Yeah, I know it's basically the stress just completely lifted the minute I did that. So, and I love helping people. So this is great.
One of the things that you kind of talked about that is not really related to men's health, but that I'm seeing a lot more of, and I'd love to hear your take, because it obviously would affect men as well. Do you notice that there's more emphasis now on prevention than there is on treatment? I've been reading all of these books and listening to podcasts about people that are hoping that medicine in the future is more like, let's focus on the things that are going to keep us healthy in our youth, so we're not dealing with the things with the illness on the back end. And I know there's, what is it? A teaspoon of prevention is worth a pound of cure, or an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. What are your thoughts on that? And do you feel strongly about being preventative? Is that what you're working on with your clients?
100%. In fact, that is the key. It's, it's funny because, the new generations coming up through are starting to recognize that, because we're their parents, right? And we watch, I'm watching my dad, right now go through some serious cancer. My mom died of gastrointestinal cancer. And these are all habit related. They're all these are preventative things that that with a little bit of mindfulness in how you eat, how you live your life, and how you kind of direct yourself, you can actually circumvent a lot of these diseases, because they're really related to a conglomeration of three things: high inflammation in the body, which is driven by dyslipidemia, or cholesterol and triglyceride levels that are out of whack, and high blood glucose. And when we get that trifecta kind of all messed up, where we have a high inflammatory state and we're not metabolically optimized, then that's when we start to see breakdown of the body. Add stress in on top of that, which was a big area of my research, and that will drive all of the processes that we just talked about, especially inflammation. So really at the end of the day, yeah, it's an ounce of prevention is worth, a ton of cure, really.
What kind of things are you seeing in men specifically that are contributing to a decline in health? What action items could men start doing today, regardless of their age, that are going to improve their health?
Yeah. So the first thing that I have every one of my clients do, especially the males, but even my females at the onset, is measure your blood pressure. Blood pressure is such a underestimated surrogate of your overall health. And when we have hypertension, generally speaking, if it's not genetically driven or driven by some ailment that you have, but in healthy people that have prehypertension or hypertension, it's generally an issue of lifestyle. And so those lifestyle factors, like getting good sleep, consuming enough water, and consuming enough fiber and healthy fats are really important. Now, I didn't mention carbs and protein so much there because you know what? Everybody knows you got to eat a lot of protein now. It's
Yes.
been driven home like millions of times. And people know that, they know to manipulate carbohydrates, how they feel. They may have some sort of, reason for doing so, but people understand carbohydrates relatively well.
Mm-hmm.
But what people don't understand well is high quality polyunsaturated and monounsaturated fats and fiber and the impact of those on blood lipids, inflammation, hormonal regulation. All those things are, really, really tied to those fats, fibers, and how we kind of manipulate those in our diet.
Yeah, we actually, for the month of June, are doing a men's nutrition score for free. So everyone can have access to that. That it does include fiber as one of its listed nutrients. And I mean, I think protein now has been driven home, that we all know the importance of protein, but I think you're right. Fiber, even looking at my own, I'm like woefully low some days. And after reading so much literature about it, it's definitely something that I'm going to pay attention to.
Yeah, very, very important fiber.
Absolutely. Yeah. What are some important health measures that people could take right now to prevent disease? If we can maybe break it down into like 20s and 30s, 40s and 50s. Obviously, the best time to start anything is yesterday or 20 years ago, but the second best time is now. So what kind of things can men do to prevent their health from deteriorating?
Yeah. So I mean, even if you can actually implement these things into your 20s, if during those immortal years, really the same ideas transfer across all age groups. And that's really to make sure that first of all that you're sleeping well, because that's going to drive cortisol problems, cortisol dysregulation, and a whole bunch of other issues that are going to make it really difficult for you to assimilate those nutrients. So the key to this inflammatory thing is to protect gut health. Protect gut health at the very, very beginning. And to do that, it's going to require to take a few things out of the diet that may be, causing issues with gut health. One of the main culprits are alcohol use. Mm-hmm. And one of the big problems, at least in the past youth, the current youth are pretty interesting. They're not quite into the booze as the past youth. But if you can circumvent binge drinking throughout your 20s and 30s and 40s, because that's about when your doctor tells you got to get off the booze, then you're going to limit all those gut health and inflammatory issues that occur during that period of time, if everything else is created equal. So right off the bat, limit alcohol use, because it's going to mess up your sleep and it's going to mess up your guts. The other one is to make sure that you're including, so this is a really good application. Make sure in your diet, right off the get-go, you're including fermented foods. Mm-hmm. So this is going to protect your guts by adding probiotics to the diet. Those fermented foods could include anything like kimchi, sauerkraut, all non-pasteurized stuff. So like the good stuff, and there's lots of companies now that make these fermented foods, because when the millennials came through, they all started making kombucha and all this kind of stuff. So we have this really awesome thing with these bacteria-based foods. So kombucha, kefir. So like if dairy is your thing, yogurts, and then these fermented vegetables like kimchi and sauerkraut. And there's companies like Wild Brine. I have no connection to them, but they have everything from, salsa verde right through to pickled radish and pickled beets. So there's a range for everybody. If you don't like the stinkiness of kimchi and cabbage, you can head into the other ones. So fermented foods, really, really important. And then those being your probiotics that are going to colonize your large intestine. You want to feed those bacteria so they colonize well and take over all the bad bacteria by consuming those fibers, prebiotic fibers. And a lot of those are soluble fibers. So if you're looking, throw some chia in your food, throw some flax in your food. And if you get a few tablespoons of that in there every day, then you're going to have those fibers to feed those probiotics. Also, with those fibers, you're going to get some insoluble fiber in there. So that's going to help you build bulk in your stool. Mm-hmm. And really, at the end of the day, if you're looking at your poops and they are a nice darkish brown color, they're solid logs, and they come out quite easily, then your gut health is likely on track to being well. So really, though, if someone follows that all the way through, then they won't have to worry about fixing their guts. There's all these gut health resets and all this kind of stuff. Really, it's a matter of preventative medicine. That's going to decrease inflammatory effects in the guts. It's going to decrease leaky gut syndrome, which is something that's really common now, which when that occurs, then we leak these lipopolysaccharides into the blood, and those are what then cause systemic inflammation. And when we get those down, then your metabolism starts working well because your cells don't like inflammation. That small little hack with the fiber and the fermented foods is probably the number one thing that I've added into everyone's diet that we see the greatest effect on digestive health.
Yeah, I know a lot of people, like in Revelstoke, we see a ton of people drinking kombucha or people even making it. I think you can make it with like 3 ingredients in your home.
Oh, yeah.
It's really accessible. So I know that I was listening to a podcast actually that was talking about fermented foods and gut health. And I really didn't incorporate any of that. And then I love being a guinea pig because if I'm talking about it, I want to try it. And I just felt like vital after, drinking kombucha for a couple weeks steady. I was like, I just feel so good. And we are learning so much more about gut health and overall health and how it affects everything, like to your mind. Obviously, it's just the science there is so exciting. I'm really paying attention to all of that and trying to keep my own guts in check for sure, because I also have family history of some gastric cancers and that kind of thing. So trying to stay on top of it now.
Stay on top of it. That's the key. And that one, if you carry that through your life as a goal to protect your guts, then a lot of the issues that in men's health actually start to dissipate, and female health also, because issues like PCOS in females are generally can be manipulated through diet quite easily. And so and a lot of times, or every time I have a woman come to me with PCOS, we have issues with gut health. So there's a lot of chicken and egg things that occur with our gut health in men's health. And it's not actually a chicken or egg problem. It's more of a snake eating its tail issue. And you got to be able to get into that circular issue that, so we got this gut health problem that decreases digestion, that then causes issues with everything from inflammation, performance, and testosterone levels, right? And then as we get this, then if we can step in somewhere along the line and be able to manipulate diet somewhat. So by just adding a small amount of fiber in, every week into the diet, and add small amounts of probiotic bacteria from foods into the diet, you can actually get yourself into that loop and then stop it from looping, and then just get this linear thing where you're just on a path to betterness.
Greatness.
That's right.
I think one of the most interesting things about the difference between men and women, and this is just my own personal experience, is I feel like oftentimes women get on top of things sooner than men do. And I think part of it is just the stigma about self-care, and men just, I think for whatever reason, in my circle anyway, have a harder time embracing that, like looking at my own parents. My mom has always been on top of everything, and my dad is on top of things when my mom makes sure that he is. So I think it's really interesting to talk about focusing on these things in youth. Do you work with people that are younger, or are you mostly working with men who are in their late 30s, 40s, 50s? Are you seeing a prevalence of younger men starting to?
I do have a lot of younger men. Most of my younger group guys. So it's actually funny. So I have a lot of young women, like most of my roster. I've got a range of women, but I have a lot of young women, and we're talking as young as 19.
Good, right? For her.
Right? As young as 19. And in fact, that was one of the girls I was talking about PCOS. It was a girl who came to me with PCOS, but she thought she was overtraining. And because you get similar symptoms to this thing called red S, which is relative energy deficiency in sport, and you see all the same things like lack of menstruation, all this kind of stuff. And so I have a lot of those that are like, I'm concerned about this situation I have. The boys, and funny enough that you say this, are mostly the bodybuilders.
Yes.
Okay, and they're mostly on bodybuilding things.
Absolutely.
So it's kind of the opposite. But here's what's cool about it. Here's the cool thing: is I won't deal with bodybuilders to get them on the juice and get them doing their shows. What I do in the background is I do basically it's prevention, right? It's harm reduction. Is I have these pro bodybuilders, it's their career, and they come to me so that I can basically give them the go ahead when they're healthy enough to go on to competing. Then they compete for the year, do the Mr. Olympia, and then I watch their blood work every 4 weeks, and we go through a lot of dietary exercises and whatnot to get things back, and then they go and mess it all up again, right? So the young guys actually are coming to me now with prevention in mind.
Yes.
But then they've got this insult they're doing to themselves on the side, right? So it is a step in the right direction. Like men are actually now starting to realize that, they need to pay attention to their health. But yeah, for the most part, if they aren't coming to me for bodybuilding, there's very few guys. I have a couple, but there's very few guys, below 25 that are coming to see me about gut health problems or anything, unless it's severe issues that they've never been able to get a hold of. And they've seen numerous specialists. And this kind of seems to be the deal of the day when they come to me. They're coming to me because they basically have exhausted all of their resources.
Right.
And it generally works. But like you're mentioning, yeah, there's only a few guys and they aren't preventing anything. They're actually at a point where they're so direly in need that we're basically digging out of a real deep hole to get to a normal state.
Yeah, we actually at Chronometer see similar users, I would say. The younger men that are using us for more body composition changes. Do you think that there's value for tracking micronutrition with body recomposition? Or is it just like everyone's always so obsessed with macros? Obviously, our differentiator at Chronometer is that we do focus on micronutrition. What are the values for these people to track their micronutrients?
So first of all, I want to say that hats off to your team for putting together such a remarkable micronutrient system, I guess.
Thank you. We all say thank you.
That's why I use Chronometer.
Me
and
too.
I've tried everything. So yes, I am micronutrition focused. There's lots of macro coaches out there.
Yes.
And the reason why, and there's a reason why they are macro coaches, is because their scope of practice only allows them to tell people to eat certain macros. And that's totally cool. That's good because they're staying within their scope of practice. For me, though, it's funny because, I put together the macronutrient profile, but the macronutrient profile I do for my clients is all customized. And usually it starts with 33% across the board. So I can actually get a grip on how their body metabolizes carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. And then we start playing with the actual numbers to strictly suit them. Now, here's what's neat about not just following macros and not following micros. And I've talked to my wife about this. She's like 98-pound marathon runner. And I said, for sure, you're in nutritional deficit, or at least in a micronutrition deficit, because at your body weight, it's really difficult when you're trying to recomposition things to get enough micronutrition at 1,500 calories than it would be, say, for myself when I'm dieting at 2,900 calories, right?
Absolutely.
So Chronometer is a very beautiful highlight of that. And it's lovely too, because then I can recommend supplements and we can watch the kind of fuel gauges, which I love, go up and optimize. And it's really neat because although I'm a supplement formulator, right now, I work with HD Muscle and I do all their work. I just finished a big health line for them. But first and foremost, it's food.
Absolutely.
And that's what I love about Chronometer, because the people that come to me, they're eating, whey protein, almond milk, oats for breakfast, chicken, rice with a piece of broccoli for lunch. And they repeat that thing 4 times, and then they do a dinner with some steak. I can show them pretty quickly why they feel like garbage, because they're low in micronutrition because they generally don't eat a lot of vegetables.
Right.
right? I've because of Chronometer, I've managed to actually shift people's thoughts into like set it and forget it on the macros. They're going to be there because we're going to be throwing chicken and stuff on your plate. But the thing people miss out on is chopping vegetables up. Like
Yes.
chicken's easy to throw into a frying pan or into a air fryer, right? But vegetables take some time. So that's where Chronometer has been a real big one for my clients to show them, like, and in men, I can show them that, they're not getting enough cruciferous vegetables, because when we do that, we're going to optimize our hormones. And I can tell you're not getting enough because we're not getting enough, magnesium, iron, and all these other things that we get from those vegetables. So there's a lot of ways to sell it based on the fact that Chronometer has done such a remarkable job creating this micronutrition setup. And it's so comprehensive. It's unbelievable. So yeah, good stuff. Love it.
I'm so glad that you feel that way. I do too, but it's been interesting because when I started, I knew very little. I obviously knew about vitamins and minerals, but not that they were even called micronutrients. And when I talked to the people in my circle that obviously aren't engrossed in nutrition the way that I am, they're like, does that really even matter? Like we've gone through such an interesting shift in where our education is, I think, just as a whole. Like there was a lot of calorie and fat focus, and then we're starting to really, like, most people now have a handle on what the macronutrients are, and now I feel like very slowly we're starting to learn about micronutrients. And I think one of the most powerful things about Chronometer is there are a lot of nutrient gaps in our typical diets, and I don't think that you could find those if you weren't tracking.
100%.
I've often spoken about my own magnesium deficiency. You think you're eating well, but you don't actually know until you know. And then the importance of supplementation because of that. I started taking a magnesium supplement, so knowing where to fill the gaps, basically, and then how that does affect performance and overall health and vitality. Like, you might be hitting some body comp goals, tracking your macros, but I think like the true energy, like I used to have a nap on the Chronometer couch at 2 p.m. because I have no energy. And now I'm much like you. I'm living over here. So.
And it's important. And it's funny because, tracking macros is obviously very, very, it's fundamental to body composition change, right? But how you get those macros is really, really important. And there was a phase, 2015 to about 2019, that people were just talking about, this intuitive eating and just tracking your macros. And so it was huge, where people were just going out and eating like, I need some carbs. They eat a chocolate bar, carbs and fat, good, handled. And the problem with these high macro dense foods, so even like when we go out for fast food, very, very macro dense, which is awesome because it's cheap and we get a lot of energy from it. But because it's so highly processed, it doesn't have micronutrition. And this is why we have relative nutrition deficiencies in obese populations. So we have these people that are consuming 4,000 to 10,000 calories a day, no problem. But they're actually still nutrient deficient because the foods they're choosing are very, very void in micronutrition. And at the end of the day, it's nice to have those macros all set up, right? Because that's really good for building things and storing stuff. But the cells that the cells that are required to metabolize those foods actually need those catalysts, which are our vitamins and minerals that drive metabolism so that we can utilize them. So a lot of times that's why I end up with bodybuilders that have been on these, macro focused diets, which makes total sense. You're competing. But I end up with, they end up with high inflammation, dyslipidemia, so issues with their cholesterol and whatnot, and sometimes even issues with their blood glucose. And the way to get back to that is going back to basically how in the 70s, my mom used to make our food. And it was like, you can't have carrots just with broccoli. You got to make sure you have like 3 or 4 different colors. And it was funny because that's what I'm promoting now, and it's repairing people. So it's really cool.
You've become your mother.
It's wild. It makes my life easy, I'll tell you.
I think one of the things, though, with that men struggle with, and again, this is just my own circle of men, they don't really want to track, or they don't see the value of tracking, or they find it tedious. I myself have tracked for as long as I've worked here, which is over 5 years. And people are like, how are you still tracking? Like, don't you eat the same thing all the time? And I'm like, no, like honestly, swapping a banana out for an apple will change your targets for the day. So easy stuff like that. How do you get men in particular to adhere to your guidelines, recommendations to actually realize their full potential?
Yeah. So most times they don't track, or they won't track, or they will track sporadically. So I'll go through my Chronometer Pro and I'll be like, oh, okay, so the first they hit it good, and sixth they got it, but they didn't do anything in between. So what I generally do for all my clients, I actually give meal plans with foods in it. And the idea behind it is, what I do is I educate them. So I have a consult after I send them the meal plan, and I give an explanation for every single line item ingredient in each meal, like why that is in there. And I also give them some education on how we swap those out. But I tell them, for the first, 3 or 4 weeks, we're going to just eat the same stuff over and over and over again, so that we can actually get you feeling amazing and maximize and optimize the micronutrition, so that you and macros for that matter, because a lot of people undereat like really badly. And so we get all that kind of under control, and then they feel great, and then it's easy. Then I just start saying, okay, you can swap that broccoli out for ABC, or you can swap those carrots out for ABC, and educate them on it, so that when they do skip out on the Chronometer stuff, that they're still getting the nutrition they need. Chronometer always comes into play for me, though, anytime it feels like things are getting a little bit sideways. I'm like, hey, body comp changes aren't changing in the right direction, whether it be gaining weight or losing weight. I haven't had a check-in in like 2 weeks. This person's not checking in. Then what I do is I'll be like, okay, we need a consult. We do a consult, and then it's like, okay, I want you to follow the diet 100% on Chronometer. I'm going to watch it. I'm going to watch your weight, and then it's awesome, because I love how everything's integrated. I can see it happen. Like, they're always weighing themselves, so their weight's doing this, and all of a sudden then we get back to either this or going up again like we want. So Chronometer is a wonderful thing, even for the people that don't track, because it allows us to do a little bit of a, for lack of a better term, lie detector test over the course of a couple of weeks, to see if truly they are following or not. Right.
Yeah. I think that sometimes even sometimes I'm tempted to lie to Chronometer, and I'm like, I won't put that in. I'm like, I'm doing myself a disservice. Like every once in a while, I will blow my calorie recommendation out of the water. I'm talking like double. Like I will absolutely punish 4,600 calories, and I have no shame about it anymore. I'm like, that is a day. Obviously, I had a big exercise day before. My body needed it. I'm just going to tackle it. So I don't have a problem with adherence. I know actually Dawn's community, a number of them work with Adam Ross. Have you met Adam?
Yeah, so Adam and I work together too. So we have we have a little trifecta going on.
Yeah.
Where so if Adam's having if his clients are having difficulty, they lost weight, gain weight, whatever they're looking for the first 12 weeks or whatever, and then all of a sudden there's like a change. Then that's when I'll step in, get them to get blood work, look at their blood work, do a little tweaky. So yeah, Adam and I work like really closely together.
When I met a bunch of his clients last year at DawnCon, we can look to see how many servings people have logged in Chronometer, and they are all very high. I'm talking like, I think I have like 14,000 servings logged in Chronometer, and some of them had more than me. And I was like, Adam, whatever you are doing, your adherence of your clients is astonishing. I'm like, everyone needs to have an Adam in their life, I think, because it was so impressive. Anyway.
Yeah, and we all do the same thing, and that's why like Dawn and all of us, there's some clients we actually share. Like I'll have them on my pro. Actually, Dawn's on my pro. I'm watching Dawn's stuff right now, even so see why he wants to get leaned up. So yeah, so it's funny. Adam, Dawn, and I are like we're like kind of a little team that work on those things together.
That's awesome. And you guys all obviously really walk your talk, which I think is so important. It's good to see people that are out there that are telling their clients to do something and that are also doing it, because I think that that's where you can develop true empathy and understanding. I think that's important. And it's awesome that I've actually had them both on the podcast, and now I have you. So now I've, got the holy grail of, of health experts. One of the things that you talked about, which definitely piqued my interest, was about stress. So I feel like many men struggle with stress management. What are some things that they can do to alleviate stress?
There's a couple things we can do dietary wise, but the number one thing I tend to have them do, and this helps with diet also and digestion, is to start meditating. Now, this is a hard one. This is a tough one. You got to trick them into it. There's a little trick I do. So they'll generally come to me, the stressed out person. Then I say, measure your blood pressure, like I mentioned earlier. Then they get their blood pressure measured and they're slightly hypertensive or pre-hypertensive. And then I tell them, okay, so what I want you to do is measure your blood pressure once a week. I just did this with a client yesterday. Once a day for a week. And I want you to send me your measurements. And then they send them, and then they're like, oh yeah, I had a stressful morning, and they give me notes with them, right? And then the next week I say, okay, what I want you to do now is I want you to breathe 3 breaths, just 3. 3 in, 3 out with 5-second in, hold for 5, release for 5. So cyclic breathing. I show them how to do it. And I say, if you start focusing on anything else but that breathing, you got to start over again, just 3 breaths. And then they start laughing, oh, 3 breaths, no problem. They do it. And I say, you got to start over if you don't do it. So they're like, holy crap, it took me like 10 minutes to get 3 breaths focused. But when I did, I couldn't believe how low my blood pressure was. Mm-hmm. And so meditation is a number one thing that I tell people to do. If you want to call it Wim Hof breathing, because you think the meditation sounds too yoga-y, then go ahead. Call it whatever you want. But the idea is to focus for just a small period of time throughout the day. And so what I build up to is 3 blood pressure measurements a day, but it's really, I'm trying to get them to do 3 10-minute breathing periods in the day.
Right.
Okay. And
very sneaky.
And then with the focus on blood pressure, it gives these guys something to focus on, right? Other than like, who is this guy that has me breathing weird? And then what ends up happening is most of them end up, incorporating that in their life because they realize how less stress it gives them because they have 3 points in the day that they're focused on just present. Mm-hmm. That's really important. Now, the other thing to do is to make sure that you're getting enough omega-3s and fiber in the diet. And that's going to be really, really important because as our stress goes up and as our sleep gets worse, then we need to have things in the diet that are going to circumvent the insult of that the inflammation that occurs because of the lack of deep sleep and whatnot. So 2 of the things that are missing in most men's diets are omega-3 fatty acids because, they're like, I'm not taking fish oil. Mm-hmm. And the fiber. So if they can shoot to get up to 38 grams of fiber. Now I have most people up around 50 grams, but 38 is a nice, good target to hit. And it's not going to cause too much digestive problems, and get in about 3 grams of combined DHA EPA from fish oil. So if you look on the label, that's what makes up the omega-3 fatty acids in most omega-3 products. If you add those up, you want to get, like I said, about 3 grams-ish of that. Those 2 things together, very small change in the diet, can really, really keep inflammation down, especially if you're, omega-6 heavy in your diet. The inflammation is the key to then circumventing these stress insults, because stress is going to occur anyway. Okay, that's big. The other one is, though, when you have control of your diet throughout the day, it creates a mindful experience. And so it's funny because there's a lot of talk about, oh yeah, everybody takes pictures of their meals, right? But what's really neat about mindful eating is that's a chronic condition. When you eat, you're eating throughout the day, every day, if you're doing it right. So those periods of eating could last up to a preparation and eating can last up to an hour quite easily. So if you're focused purely on making that food taste, look, and benefit your body, that's going to give you another set of time that's going to be repeated throughout the day where you're focused.
Right.
And so this is where I use a biopsychosocial model, which most coaches don't use, because the biological aspects of the macros, right? That part's easy to control. Mm-hmm. But getting people to actually lead their lives healthy so that they can assimilate the nutrients from the diet you gave them and feel good is psychological and social related. So if you can incorporate mindful eating with these meals throughout each day, then this actually enables or basically forces the person into being present throughout the day. So you've got now blood pressure measurements and you got your food that you're laying out. Now you're going to be present for a heck of a lot longer in a day than you would be if you didn't do otherwise. And so that's why I really find it important when I'm working with my clients to give them really, really well laid out diets that they understand. So they get excited about the colors. They get excited, like, wow, that plate looks like something I want to take a picture of. Take a picture of it. That means you're there. You're present. Put it on Instagram because you're literally going to type about this meal you're eating and not think about anything else around your life. So stress is really a matter of being able to take those eustress moments, the good stress,
Yes.
right? And really enjoy them. So that's our workouts, that's our foods, that's like, preparing food. Like, don't make preparing food a stress, make it a time for you to take care of yourself. That way, all of that distress that you have with work actually becomes eustress a lot of times, because you're actually feeling good about it. You're excited to get into work. You're excited to get the day done because you want to get out for that hike, or like it's 11 o'clock and at 12, you're going to eat this wicked meal that you made last night. And as soon as you get into nutrition like that, a lot of the stress falls off. You start to realize that the important things is taking care of yourself.
I agree. I think that self-care is a struggle for a lot of men. What kind of things do you do for self-care personally?
Yeah, so I make sure that and I was I was the king of non-presence. My mom constantly used to tell me to stop and smell the roses, and I didn't even know what that meant until I got a little older. But so I take each part of my day. So when I wake up in the morning and I have like ritualistic things I do. And being a former bodybuilder, it's quite easy to do that. And bodybuilders can all relate to this. But the point is, I wake up and I make sure that I, drink a really big bottle of water, usually 750 mils shaker with some glutamine in it. I usually put a scoop of some fiber in there, maybe some ground flax or ground chia. And then I throw in some sea salt, just a pinch of sea salt, like maybe an eighth teaspoon or something. And I chug that. And I'm present for that whole moment. And in fact, it's funny because that's how I started my social media account, was by taking pictures and videos of rituals I do, and made me present. Then I go about getting my, I really focus on getting my daughter off to school with a really good meal. So she loves egg breakfast, which makes me really happy because the high choline and everything's really good for the brain. So then I focus on her meal. And then once she's off to school, I then go into my breakfast, I get it all together. And I generally try to take pictures of it or take some sort of video so that I'm staying present while I'm making it. I log it into Chronometer, which is also another cool way to stay present with your food. Because if you don't have 3 minutes to log that food, then you're kind of running a little ragged. You need to look at your schedule, right? So that's another one, right? And then I actually plan my day based around food. And so does Dawn. Dawn and I, we call each other probably 2 or 3 times a day. And it's always when we're eating. And he'll be like, "What are you doing?" And I'll have a bowl in front of me and I'll be eating. I'll do the same thing you're doing. We're FaceTiming, eh?
What a bromance.
Yeah, total bro. It's a food. Oh, my
absolutely
wife is the hilarious thing she's ever seen. But that's how I actually keep myself present, because I've got a stressful life. I fly all over the place, give talks. I'm on podcasts every day. I've got a massive roster of clients. And if I focused on, I'm looking up my wall right now with all these things. I got 5 screens sitting in my room here. If I focused on the mission control that I'm sitting at right now, it'd be very daunting. But I do know that after this podcast, I'm going to go in and I'm going to make a wicked, wicked lunch.
Me too.
And that lunch is going to look really, really cool, right? So really, I will. So getting into your diet, right, is a great way to circumvent stress, because a lot of people find making food stressful, but it's really self-care, right? That's all you're doing. And so Chronometer is a great thing to have, embedded within there, because you got to be focused while you're doing it. You're also getting number feedback to you, letting you know what's going on with your macros, right? So you don't overspill or eat too little or whatever. And if you really get into it, you can go into your micronutrition and be like, oh, okay, next time I make that breakfast, I'm going to maybe add a little bit of blueberries, or I'm going to add something in there to get the antioxidants up. And I just love that meter too with the antioxidants. It's great.
I know.
So, right. So it's really a matter of for these men, putting some control in their life and getting control of things that are going to actually be healthy, right? And enjoying going through that process, because if you enjoy the process, then it becomes it's something you look forward to.
Yes.
So now you're looking forward to your nutrition, just like you were, even if your workouts are going great, now your nutrition is going to match that. And that's going to make you feel better down the road. And that's going to make you sleep better. And that's going to keep inflammation down. And that's going to keep testosterone up because you're sleeping well. And, it's just basically a trickle down effect of, mindful eating. That's our most important thing. We eat, that's how we stay alive.
Fuel. I have 2 more topics that I really want to discuss. One, we've mentioned a couple times, but I really want to dive into it, is sleep. So I think that there's a lot of people that I know that do shift work, and they'll be away for long periods of time, away from their home, which would, at best, maybe they have a sleep environment set up at home and they don't have access to the same things when they're away at camp, or at worst, they're either days sometimes, night shift sometimes, or, one of my friends just got off a 5-month stint of doing night shift, and their sleep is very disrupted. And I'm always talking about the importance of sleep, but I think that oftentimes it's minimized. Can you touch on really how to optimize sleep in those kind of environments and why it's so important for men?
Yeah, I mean, it's important for everyone. So night shifts they wreak havoc on our obviously on our circadian rhythms. And because of that, everything in our body, we're now starting to realize, even the bacteria in our guts follow a chronology or a chrono, like basically a time phase.
Wow.
And they're locked. Yeah, so and they're locked into our circadian rhythms. So there's ways to play with those circadian rhythms so that you can optimize them. A lot of times, though, with shift work, problem is that a lot of people go on, they'll be on. So for MDs, for example, like for medical doctors, when they go on shift work, they might do 4, 12 to 16-hour shifts. Mm-hmm. And then go off for a week, and then they got to reestablish things, and then they go on a week of days, and then they're off, now they're back on, and then they go back on nights. Mm-hmm. And they'll be on call on the weekends. So if they get called in, then they may be on days, but they're actually on nights in the middle of the night when they have to go in and help out for an emergency. So it's unique for every single situation. But here's a couple things that you can do. So number one, this is where melatonin is a good thing. I don't usually recommend melatonin a lot of times for people because it can mess things up. Mm-hmm. But melatonin is a great way to get on to a new circadian rhythm. So, when you go from day to night shift or night to day shift, you would take your melatonin then within, a short period before a sleep period that you want to now get on that. That's going to become your new sleep period. So take it an hour or two before, and that should put you on the same circadian clock as you should be, for at least get you closer to it for that nighttime wakefulness. The other thing to do, though, too, is to make sure that your nutrition follows that new circadian rhythm that you're trying to set. And I actually have an emergency physician that we just worked through this a couple of weeks ago. So she was saying to me, she said, well, the problem is, though, I have to try and get all my food in before I do the night shift. And I'm like, no. I said, don't worry about having dinner before you go in for the night shift. I said, when you wake up from your nap to go in for the night shift, have your breakfast. And so you're going to have your breakfast at night. So we're going to flip all your meals over so that when you come home from the night shift, or at the end of your night shift, you're going to have your dinner. Mm-hmm. And I said, and so if you flip it over like that, generally, if your diet is set up properly, where you're eating the abundance of your calories toward like the morning, afternoon, and then your calories at night are more directed toward, they're not much lower, but they're a little bit lower than what was in the morning meal and afternoon meal. But your nighttime calories are directed more toward carbohydrates. What you'll do is you'll start driving down cortisol before you go to bed, even if you're going to bed in the afternoon. Okay. Interesting. So one of the things that occurs in our body is that, with cortisol, is that when we wake up, we have this diurnal cortisol, basically a program that our body sets. And so we have high cortisol in the morning that gets us up and gets us moving and motivated to do things, shoots some blood sugar from our liver into our blood so that we can, do things after a night's fast. And then it slowly peters out over the night. And then we get tired toward the evening, and cortisol is relatively low. And that allows us to sleep throughout the evening. And one of the biggest problems with shift work is cortisol dysregulation. So cortisol goes up when we're calorically restricted. Cortisol goes up because it's a stress hormone. Mm-hmm. Cortisol also goes up when we're under low carbohydrates. So if we shift our carbohydrate meal, relatively large carbohydrate meal, to before we go to sleep, doesn't matter whether it's at night or in the morning for shift work, then that should get with the melatonin, it should get us back on some sort of circadian rhythm so that the night shifts don't feel so bad. So you're going to shift your meals as well as your sleep. And that's what a lot of people don't do.
That is amazing advice. Because in Western Canada in particular, there is a lot of shift work that happens. There's a lot of people that are working away. And I would have never thought that timing your meals would affect your sleep that way. But that's a very clear action item. I love that.
Awesome.
The other thing that I want to talk about is alcohol consumption, because I think that I think men, even more than women, it's more of a social thing. I think typically, grab a couple of beers with your buddies, watch a game, whatever. What is the new suggestion on alcohol consumption? Because I know recently in Canada, they reduced it drastically. I actually don't know how much it is. I don't personally drink alcohol. Is it down to 1 or 2 drinks a week now from?
Yeah. They're actually talking weekly now. So it used to be 4 for an average size male. It was like 4 drinks within a 1 sitting was considered a binge. And 1 sitting is a few hours, right? And and so now they know through the health data that actually, if you have these binges, even once a week, that it becomes deleterious to your health. And to be honest, like the biggest problem with alcohol that I see is that it's very little benefit. So very, very little benefit, highly, highly addictive, and 100% guaranteed you're going to be told you have to quit one day if you overconsume it.
Right.
For health reasons. So right off the bat, it's definitely not conducive to any goals for anybody. Right. Now, people like having a couple beers.
Absolutely.
That's right. And that's just the way it is. So the biggest issue with even just a couple of beers are the inflammatory effects that you get systemically, as well as in the guts and everywhere else, and the decision-making you make on diet and activity that occurs because of alcohol consumption. So really, if someone's got their alcohol consumption down to 1 or 2 beers, once or twice a week after the hockey, after men's league hockey or whatever they're doing, right? There's really no issue in that, to be honest. But where it becomes an issue is, and alcohol is very insidious. And when it goes from those 2 beers after those 2 games to let's go out after the game and have 6 beers at Boston Pizza. And then now all of a sudden you're drinking a 6-pack before you go to sleep every night. That's where the issues really start to come in. And we know with alcohol, it is generally an insidious increase. And so people go, oh, geez, I got to back off on the booze. So they quit for 6 months or whatever. They do a dry January, what do they do? And then they come back to it and it's like, oh, good. Now I just have my 1 glass of wine again. But it always is that cyclic issue. So I'd say if you're going to drink alcohol, first of all, limit it to, 2 drinks in an individual evening. Right. And that's usually, within a couple hours. If you feel it, that's when you start actually having the problem. So a lot of people like to feel the alcohol because that's kind of the whole point. In a lot of cases, if you're feeling it, you're building blood alcohol levels. And that's what they're trying to do. That's what they're trying to do with these new guidelines, is not have blood alcohol levels go up, but rather you're consuming it at a rate that you're metabolizing it just as fast. So, if you're going to consume a couple beers after a game, super duper, just keep an eye on your consumption over time.
Right.
Because generally what happens then is at the birthdays that you'd normally have a couple of beers, you might have 6 this time, and over time it builds. So yeah, so alcohol as a general rule, I don't usually shun it unless it's obviously holding people back. I do warn against it, that it can, kind of sneak into your life a little deeper than you thought it would. And I usually give recommendations on, if you're going to have a beer, pick one that's really, really good. Like enjoy it. Get yourself a craft beer that's, $9 a pint. Don't get a Bud Light. Because at the end of the day, that's again back to that mindfulness, right? You're going to own this thing, you're going to drink it, and you're going to enjoy it. You're not shotgunning it or, just chugging it back, but rather enjoying it. And you'll get a lot more out of that experience than you will just, plowing back a couple of Bud Lights. No offense to Bud Light, but
that was, I have 3 questions from what you just said. One is, should people try to work their alcohol consumption into their macros? So should you consume less carbs from food on days that you are going to be drinking beer?
No.
Great.
It doesn't matter whether you're just coming to see me for, weight loss and fixing up the blood work, or it's, you're a high performance athlete. The idea is performance. We're made up of 40% muscle. We're put on earth to perform. Now, performance might be, cutting the lawn. Performance might be walking on your hands. Doesn't really matter what that performance is, but our body's made to move and do things constantly. And so really at the end of the day, you can't replace, half a cup of rice and 100 grams of broccoli with, 3 beers. It's just, you're getting that's a micronutrition thing we're talking about, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
Yes.
And the macronutrition, actually alcohol gets burned off first. So now all those wicked, awesome carbohydrates that you ate earlier on in the day, you're not going to be doing anything with those for a long time until you get rid of all the beers and chicken wings that you just ate at, at the local pub.
I also didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. Alcohol gets burned off first. So
really?
yeah. Yeah.
So on those days though, I actually don't know the nutrient profile, I admit, to a craft beer versus something like Bud Light, but I'm assuming that a craft beer would probably have more calories and carbs.
Absolutely. It would definitely have more calories, 100%. I wouldn't put it into like, the micronutrient dense category. Sorry. I wouldn't put it in that category at all because it's really not, no matter what. I joke around with guys, go, yeah, I get more fiber out of that one. But at the end of the day, really, alcohol should be looked at as like a treat. Okay. It should not replace anything. If you're going to drink, in my eyes, still eat. And then if we're going to have issues down the road that we're not meeting our performance and aesthetic goals, if that's what we're looking for, then alcohol is going to be the first thing we pull out.
Right.
Because if we can't pull it out, then we need to send you to someone else because this is a psychological problem now. And that's that insidiousness I told you about alcohol. And I've dealt with this for years with clients, them saying, well, I'm going to have my 3 glasses of wine every night, no matter what. And really the conversation then becomes one of like, what is your relationship with alcohol? Because if we're saying that it's not doing anything good for you, like what is it doing? Right. So it's a completely other conversation. I don't consider alcohol, I would put it in the same category as, having a chocolate bar.
Right.
You can count it as your macros, but don't take out the good food to eat the chocolate bar. You just eat that on top of things.
Yeah, I was surprised. I think that I remember looking at the calories in a craft beer and I was like, if I consumed 2 of these, I would be blowing my caloric recommendation for the day just out of the water. And because I don't like the taste of alcohol and that's why I don't drink it, then it's no skin off mine. But if I did like it, then it would, like, those are sneaky calories to me. The other thing I wanted to ask was about consumption timing. Would it be better, and I don't really know what I mean by better necessarily in this context, but I guess better for your health to consume 1 beer a day or 7 beers in one day?
1 beer a day would be healthier in my eyes.
Tell me why.
Because the insult is smaller. So if we look at it, let me think for a second. Okay, here's one for you. This might not be as accurate as I think it is, but if you have a really, really high performance car, right, and you burn through a tank of gas in a day, right, you're going to do a heck of a lot more damage to that car than if you drive it slower and metabolize that gas over time.
Right.
Okay, because you don't have to like really drive it hard. When we drink alcohol, we basically turn on hormonal systems and turn off hormonal systems that are, I'll be really, really vague, but they're basically the linear increase in your alcohol consumption causes a linear increase in the issues that occur with alcohol consumption. So 1 beer at 5 o'clock at night, say, or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, your body will metabolize quite well at my weight, say, for example, at 198 pounds, I'll be able to metabolize that 1 beer within probably 45 minutes to an hour, right? So if I'm having that for 1 day, it's one individual low concentration insult that my body has to deal with over the course of the day. Right. If I decide to save those up and have 7 beers at 9 o'clock at night, and I can drink 7 beers between 9 and 11, okay, which isn't an unreasonable thing to do. Nope. Then what happens is I've got 3 hours of insult, 3 or 4 hours of insult, right? And I have the time it's going to take because now we've built blood alcohol level up. Now our liver and the rest of our body has to deal with that high level of alcohol for several hours afterwards, like 12, 13, 14 hours afterwards. And the problem is in that state, we end up in a hormonal deficit in a lot of ways. So it lowers our testosterone, increases our cortisol, causes a whole bunch of real big problems, increases blood glucose. So we've got like probably 3 or 4 days, I would say, where we're not metabolically optimized.
Yikes.
Right.
That's a big hit.
Right. Right. So that's a great example of the effects of a bolus of macronutrients that are unhealthy versus little bits throughout the week. Better example is poison. Okay, so we got poison A. Poison A, because the alcohol is a poison, right? So we have poison A that that we can take, but if you hit 1 gram dose, it will kill you. So you can take 1 milligram or 100 milligrams for 10 days, right? To get to the gram, or you can take the 1 gram that day and it's going to kill you. That's a good example of it. A little bit, sensationalized, but that's the idea. Now, for the listeners that hear this and think that I'm some teetotaler that's completely against alcohol. Alcohol has been a massive thing in my family for years, and in our family here, I choose not to drink because of my kidney and everything else that goes on. But my wife likes to have a glass of wine a week.
Absolutely.
It gets to the point where it's a glass of wine a night. And right now she's in a phase where it's like, okay, I got to get off the booze, right? So and she's a healthy marathon runner. Like she can qualify for Boston every year like that.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's one of those things where as long as you're in check and you're watching the insidiousness of the booze, you can usually keep it under control. It's when you forget about that, and that's where the problem is. So 7 drinks in one sitting is setting yourself up for a binge. That sets yourself up for trouble down the road. Okay.
So hangovers, there's all I've heard it all. I've heard all of these hangover cures. Is there any truth to drinking more water when you're drinking is going to alleviate the symptoms of a hangover? And people also talk about having Gatorade and vitamins the next morning. Is that fact or fiction? Like someone overindulges. Yeah, so what's gonna make it better? Anything?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I think I have a good answer to this because I think I figured it out because I was in university a long time, and so
30 years.
And trust me, I took full advantage of my youth in my university years. So.
Absolutely.
So drinking in the younger years. So there's a whole bunch of reasons for hangover, and so drinking in the younger years tends to have a lot more of disinhibition that occurs. So in other words, we drink and we become inhibited, become disinhibited. And we'll do things that we actually normally wouldn't do.
Absolutely.
So there's a lot of after hours things that happen. There's those kind of interesting things in the background that occur. So that part can involve bad decision making while you're drinking. Okay. But if we're talking about just purely booze, it's really interesting because the impacts on sleep seem to be the biggest impact on the hangover.
Absolutely.
Okay? And I've learned this anecdotally because I don't drink anymore. But I hang around people who do. Okay. And what happens as you get older is sleep deprivation becomes a way bigger problem, way bigger. And so what I've found is that when I'm sleep deprived from staying out late with people that drink without drinking, I get a hangover.
No way.
I get a hangover.
Hangover by association.
Yeah, but it's because of lack of sleep. And lack of hydration during the period that I'm standing around in a bar for 5 or 6 hours, right?
Right.
Because I'm not pounding a bunch of drinks. So it's really really the hydration, the vitamins, the Gatorade, all that kind of stuff, really important to do. I would be doing it probably the night before I go to bed and then doing it again in the morning.
Right.
Absolutely. Very important. And magnesium is going to be a real important one in there. Zinc's going to be a really important one in there. Sodium is going to be ultra important in there. So, make sure you get some sort of Relight. I like using Relight from Redmond Salts, but some sort of hydration drink in there. It can be Gatorade or whatever you feel like. Your blood glucose is going to be going all over the place too. So you want to make sure that you have a really, really high quality breakfast with fruits and oatmeal and all that kind of stuff. The fats and all those things might make things a little worse that, we kind of crave all the fats and everything. We're better off actually getting a really healthy, good meal with lots of grains and stuff like that, and just to kind of get the body moving. But then you also want so the hydration and that. But the biggest thing is the sleep part. And so when you go to bed, make sure that if you're going to party the night before, you don't have to get up.
Right.
and just sleep as long as you possibly can, because your sleep is going to be horrible. Your sleep quality is going to be in the tank because of the booze. Anybody that's listening to this that tracks their sleep, track it on a night where you have more than 2 glasses of wine, even, or 2 beers. It goes in the tank from just like a couple of drinks. And that's, I believe, what really, really messes things up, because our circadian rhythms get messed up because we get social jet lag, which is another thing. Social jet lag is, when we basically have jet lag from going out all night and then getting up early in the morning.
Right.
So you have that part that's going to mess your sleep up. The alcohol is going to mess your sleep up, and any behaviors outside the alcohol will definitely be messing up your sleep, especially stimulants and those kind of things.
Well, and it's interesting because a lot of people are like, I fall asleep more quickly. And that actually might be true. Like the science is there, when they're intoxicated, they fall asleep more quickly. But then you're right. It's not the falling asleep. It's the quality of sleep. And for me, personally, again, like my parents definitely enjoy wine, and most of my friends have, craft beers or are social drinkers. I have no issue with it. But for me, I don't like the taste of it. And then I wore an Oura ring for years. And a couple of times I did drink, I would look after and I'm like, oh man, that just tanked. Like my readiness score would be so low. And for me personally, because I don't love the taste, if I did, I would still incorporate it, because I definitely love chocolate and work that into my diet, let me tell you. But I'm like, there's no benefit here. I'm not loving the taste. It's doing nothing good for my body. Why would I do this? But all of this information has been so helpful, because I've always wanted to talk to someone about this, just because I'm fascinated by this is a very real situation for a large population. A lot of people,
the majority,
have a lot of questions about alcohol, and I actually haven't got to sit down, and we are way over time as a result. But it's been so incredible to talk to you. You're a wealth of information, and we'll have to do a follow-up episode because I still have more questions.
Oh, let's do it. It's been a complete pleasure.
I'm going to come out and visit you, and I hope that you come to DonCon. If people want to work with you or learn more about you, where can we find you? How do they go about doing that?
Yeah, so you can, on social media, I'm on pretty much on all platforms, but I really just drive things from my Instagram account. So if you look me up at DRDN Jackson, that's Dr. Dwayne N. Jackson, or you can go to my website at www.drdwaynejackson.com.
And people can fill out forms to work with you. Is that correct? Or
you can DM me on Instagram. You can fill out forms on my website or whatnot. But yeah, if you have any questions whatsoever, anybody has any questions, by all means, shoot me a message on Instagram, DM me, and I generally get back to people real quick.
Yeah, who doesn't want to work with someone with 30 years of education, university education? Before we go, one more question. And if that was, you had one action item for Men's Health Month, what would it be? It can be whatever. What's going to improve people's anything?
I would say, we've touched on this, is be mindful. If there's anything I've learned clawing my way to the top of medicine, clawing my way to the top of pro sport, and all this stuff, is that you have nothing if you don't have your present day. And if you can stay in the present, then all of your diet, your sleep, your stress, and all this stuff becomes a lot easier. So, there's no emergencies tomorrow, even though we think there are. If you can plan for tomorrow today and stay present in it, then everything else just kind of flows, and each day goes by. You eat well. You've got, you got your health, you've got your longevity, you've got your performance, and then everything just kind of falls off, and you do better at work, you do better in your relationships, you do better with finances, all that stuff. So really, it's a matter of everything you do it your best and be focused on what you're doing.
Amazing advice. I love this. This is so much fun. So definitely we'll have you back. I'll be in your DMs all the time from now on.
Awesome.
This podcast episode will be coming out shortly, and I can't wait for our users to hear it. Thank you
awesome.
so much for being here, Dwayne. Have a good day.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Bye.
See ya.
We went way over the allotted time limit, and I am so glad we did, because I learned so much in this episode. Thank you so much, Dr. Jackson, for being here and answering all of our questions on men's health. If you like this episode of the podcast, make sure that you subscribe to get future episodes. We'll see you next time.